Happy Tuesday, everybody. We are here live with the one, the only Nick Ferguson of Homegrown Liberty. And we've got John Willis from Special Operations Equipment. Of course, you know I'm Nicole Sauce. John and I are here every Tuesday, so you guys might be feeling like you're used to us being here, but this is a really good time to get your questions into us if you've been wanting to ask us stuff. Nick decided to come on today to talk to us about, well, what did we decide to talk about again, Nick? Whatever we want to talk about, right?
Yeah. Deciding next steps on your land,
Yeah.
getting free of a job, things like that.
Yeah, I thought that would be cool because you got into permaculture and then you transitioned your life into permaculture as your way of living. Tell us,
Right.
let's start with that story and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, it just kind of happened organically. I just loved teaching this kind of stuff. I loved helping people. And so I just started doing that. I just started functioning in that. And after a few years of doing that, just helping people, doing it for free, I linked up with Jack Spirko, Survival Podcast, and again, I went there to help and to teach people and just have fun. And he recognized ability there and kept inviting me back, and then offered to pay me, and then I was good enough at it that he was confident sending everyone that wanted him to do consulting and help them with their land. He just said, you know what, I don't have time for this. This is the guy that you need to talk to. And that just kind of happened. It just, it was kind of an overflow from what I enjoyed doing, and what I had been practicing. And yeah, now it's full time. I've got a backlog. I'm having to sometimes turn away people. Yeah.
Your prices keep going up and up as a result.
Yep. It slowly goes up. Inflation from the last year saw a little bump. And who knows, maybe one of these years soon, I'm not going to be doing consulting and switching over to mostly online education.
Yeah. Cool. How many years did it take to go from I kind of like plants and permaculture to I am consulting with people all over the country?
From just the kind of start of it, there was probably about a 2 to maybe 4 year period where I was just doing that stuff for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
Practicing, sharpening my skills. And then there was probably about 2 years where I went just full on. That was my profession. No, I'm not taking payments in eggs just yet, but if they keep going up, I probably will be. There was probably about a 2 year period where it was rough. It was hard going, and I think my prices were just really low.
Yeah. I got in on that.
Yeah. There was a couple of years where it was just really tough to make ends meet, but we made it. And then it got really good the next 2 years. So I think in total it was probably about 3 years in from going professional with it that I was comfortable financially.
Mm-hmm.
And now, Man, this past year it's
been a good year.
Rolling. Yes, it's been a very good year.
I love to hear that. That means that Nick will be available for consults in the future if he's doing well with consults now. That's how that works, guys. So, John, how long were you sewing before you started selling stuff that you were sewing?
Probably immediately, but I didn't make it a real business for, I don't know, probably 6-7 years, really. Like, I still had other jobs.
Yeah.
That were just super, like, back then, $3,000 a week was a ton of money for 4 hours of work a night, right? I was delivering paper routes that all overlap for like Investors Business Daily. So, that was a huge amount of money back then. So I kept that as long as I could, but I kept taking time off to go to shows to sell product till they finally fired me. And I was actually concerned about that when that happened, but I made more money like the first month than
Yeah.
all of the rest of the year once it was real. But there
Yeah.
was always that fear of, can I duplicate it each month, right?
Yeah. Is that fear gone now, John?
Yeah. I mean, we turned business. So I'm trying to stop doing this, actually.
You need a son or something to take it over and run it, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think we need to. Like, we're doing it. We literally run business now almost more for the employees that we've had for a long time than for, like, we don't have to do this. Everything we've done for the last 3-4 years, we don't have to do it. We have enough other things now that I could, if ever I needed to generate income. I mean, we just bought another big tractor and the wood processor and you know, the stuff we have. I could just do that and have a lot of fun being outside.
Yeah, something that impressed me with John as I just originally started getting to know him, is he has this business and there's a lot of product going out the door, does great quality work. And he looked at what was going on in the world, quickly assessed that there might be some instability in our economy right now. We might be, like your business, like mine, is very dependent on shipping working, for example, and supply chains. And he already knew, he's like, oh yeah, if stuff goes wrong, we're already ready to pivot here, keep our people employed and generate revenue. And he has not done that or had to do that. But the fact that he knew what to do there, I think is A, impressive, and B, it means he's not worrying about, the next supply chain outage or USPS going out of business. It's like, okay, I've already thought through what I'm going to do. We'll pivot if we have to pivot. And if we don't, we'll do what we're doing now. Anyway, I will get back to Nick on this one. I promised we would talk about how to make decisions about next steps. And something that's been going on at the Special Operations Equipment compound for years now is slowly John's taking what was basically a rock pit, right? And building soil, putting in ecosystems, raising livestock. Nick, you've been there a number of times. And in the last year, swales went in. There were already micro swales in. There's a really awesome, couple of years ago, he put in this huge pond. How does John make his decision? Like, how do you advise people to make the decision about what's next? And I don't know, John, if you've thought about what's next, but what's next? How do you go from where he is now to the next iteration of improvement on land? Because it's impressive. If you have not been to Special Operations Equipment and seen what John has done, you need to get there, because it's impressive, especially when you know where he started and how quickly he's managed to build what is there.
Yeah. What I always tell my clients whenever we're just starting a consult is the first priority is to identify the needs, to identify the concerns. So everyone has a different set of concerns. Everyone has a different set of worries or risks that they're trying to mitigate. Like John said, one of his worries or his risks that he was trying to mitigate at the very start of this endeavor with SOE Tactical was making sure we have consistent revenue coming in every month. That's not a concern anymore. So the priorities shift and change. So, I have clients that are, billionaires putting in doomsday bunkers because they're convinced, the world's going to end next month, and it never does. I have clients that, they think everything's just going to continue on hunky-dory like it always has, but it never has.
We've always been really unstable. We just weren't always aware of it.
Right. So it's identifying those critical components that you need to make sure you are meeting the need for. And then I always tell people, listen, we need to pick the lowest hanging fruit, the biggest bang for the buck that we can at the start. So the way I would be assessing things is we look at, all right, what needs are we meeting currently? And then what can we do that's going to be the most ROI, the fastest return on investment, the cheapest return, that gets us a good result, that meets one of those targeted needs. So we don't just say, well, the quickest, easiest thing is just to get a dozen chickens, because chickens are, are literally laying golden eggs right now, if you believe all the memes.
Yeah.
Well,
You can still get them for $4 a dozen at Trader Joe's, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
All over.
Yeah.
Yeah. The simple fact is that egg prices have come up and down over the last couple of decades. I've seen numerous times where it's just skyrocketed and then plummeted again. And people will be all reactionary about this stuff and get all excited. We have to have chickens now. Well, do chickens really make sense for you? I just had clients that, they eat half a dozen eggs a week. And they were talking about getting a whole bunch of chickens. And saying, why are you going to get chickens? You don't really need
You need
them.
one chicken.
Yeah, you need like a chicken.
And that's not good.
No, and that's not good. So why don't you think about something else that you can do to just trade locally with someone that's a neighbor right down the road that's almost giving eggs away for less than it cost you in feed to keep the birds, and then you don't have any of those headaches. So, look, identify those critical components that you need to be addressing, that you need to be building out to build more liberty and freedom into your life. And don't get caught up in the excitement of the moment or the memes, so to speak, of the year, and decide you have to get chickens because that's the thing to do this week. It needs to be intentional, and you need to think about long term. What does the future look like? If I get chickens, do I is this functional for my lifestyle? Does this at all make sense? Or is this going to make my life a living hell? So yeah, that's the way I approach it. I don't know, John, how are you approaching the next development, the next phase in, perfecting the system that you're working on at your compound?
So we've always got 12 different things going, right? And they never work with each other. I think the next thing that has to happen is that middle pond comes out altogether, because I can use that whole area there to move animals around in, but the way it's set up now, it's just too steep. So really what needs to happen, and I don't want to do this, but what needs to happen is we push all the dirt back in the hole and then smooth the dirt out and apply a much more gentler taper so the water doesn't, rip down and across the drive. I mean, we catch it with a culvert right there, but keep everything so that it soaks down. Put some crops on there that are going to bore deep so that, so that we get through the rock, and then have that whole gated area in there to where we can move, just cycle animals through there in confinement so that we can grow proper stuff in there. And I don't want to do that because that requires big equipment. That requires pulling all those trees out of there, knocking that, and basically revamping the entire front. But that's what needs to happen, right? It's just like, what would you do with this building? Ideally, you knock this building down and dig a building underneath it and go down and then put a proper building in. But we're beyond that, right? So we're kind of landlocked right here on this property. So we just keep, refining it. And you kind of have to do things that are going to be semi-temporary for a few years in order to get to the evolution 3-4 years, beyond that.
Right.
So
yeah,
go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was just going to say I'm facing the exact same thing here on my property. Is starting out, there were some things that I didn't know, and I just did the best with what I had, and we put in subpar fence. We used field fence, which was cheap. It's ubiquitous. We used metal T-posts, and we would put 3 strands of low tensile electric on the inside of that fence to keep my animals off of it. And that worked great for years and years. And that was my recommendation for years. And in the last several years, I've learned about better fencing, and we're putting in different fencing. Well, on one section of it, on the public facing side, we've got a county-owned fence that they don't maintain, and it's chain link fence. It would be fantastic if it was well maintained, but it's just trashed at numerous places, all down to pretty much 1,800 feet of road frontage. Well, I like the privacy. I don't want people to be driving down 1,800 foot of road frontage and looking, because the property's 320 feet wide. You can see across 320 feet. That means everybody on that road frontage can see everything that happens on the property. Well, I don't want that. It just so happens that we have buried utilities about 20 to 30 feet off of that road frontage. And so what we're doing is we're putting in the high tensile electric just on the other side of that. So we're going to have about a 30-foot buffer. And then we're going to be putting in living fence, incorporating it into the existing garbage county-owned fence. And we're going to make basically a living hedge that's going to be a functional fence to keep the livestock in, to keep two-legged predators out, because we're going to be using bodark. And I don't know if you've ever tried to climb through a bodark thicket. They have.
I would never do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that.
Not by choice. Not unless I really had to.
They got long thorns. You construct that well, and you're not taking a tank through it. So it's going to be a visual blockage. It's going to be a physical barrier. And then once that grows in, like you were talking about, staging things out, anti-meth fence. Yeah, exactly. You're going to have that. It's going to take several years for that to grow in and do well. But in the meantime, I'll have that high tensile electric fence just on the inside of it. And then eventually that can go away and be repurposed somewhere else. And then we'll have that fantastic dual layer of protection for the interim period. But yeah, that was a really good point. Sometimes you have to think about phasing approaches and do something substandard for now so that you can do something stellar a couple years down the road.
Just let bamboo go on the outside there.
Right.
Yeah. You'll have quite the patch. So on John's pond, the pond of which I speak.
Yes.
What else could be done rather than fill that in to reach the same goals? That's what I'm wondering. Does it need to be filled in?
I mean, to get that square footage back, which is a significant chunk of square footage, there's really nothing else to do but fill it in. It'd take a 126 dozer, a relatively small dozer, maybe 2 days of work to knock it out and get it all smeared out and knock over what needs to be knocked over. So it's really not that much expense. I mean, it'd probably cost a couple grand to get that done. If you're getting quotes a lot higher than that, then I think someone is probably trying to take advantage of you, because really all it takes is just a dozer or an excavator and maybe 2 days of work to get that knocked out and smeared out and regraded. Regraded well enough to do what you need it to do. So that would give you probably about half an acre to maybe 3/4 of an acre more usable pasture / fodder trees, silvopasture, orchard, any one of those types of systems. And here's the reason why I would lean more towards that, because it shouldn't be that much expense to get it done. And especially on a smaller acreage, square footage gets really valuable, especially when you're trying to get as independent of off-site inputs as possible. It becomes you need to get really min-max on your square footage usage. And John has a larger pond lower on the landscape. It's nice to have that higher on the landscape water right there, but just tactically speaking, all of the middle slope area is taken up by SOE operations. There's the building, and there's parking lot, and there's equipment, and there's material staging. So all that middle slope area is taken up with all of that high intensity traffic, and you don't really need gravity fed water there. The only place that you're going to use gravity fed water would be lower on the slope, and it's right next door to that larger pond. And then something as simple as, you know, some timbers with an IBC tote stuck on the, you know, 12 foot up on some timbers with some cross members supporting it, an IBC tote, a little 100-watt solar panel, and a cheapo Chinese DC solar pump, and then a little return overflow. And you could have that IBC tote refilled every single day 10 times over. And you could just gravity feed water from that little IBC tote anywhere on that lower acreage that you need it, and meet that gravity feed need. So, you know, a lot of people, they get into the whole permaculture thing, and they get, you know, starry eyes, rose colored glasses on, and they say, well, we've got to do all these cool things. And they hear, you know, like Jeff Lawton and Joel Salatin, everyone's saying, you know, you want to put water catchment high up on the landscape. Well, yes, you do, if there's a good use for it. And only if that usage pays off for the investment that you're going to put into it. Well, in this case, you know, really one of the only big benefits to having that pond that high up in the landscape, based on the catchment that it has, would be for periodic watering of the stuff high up on the landscape with something like that setup that I just described. You could pump water out of that a little bit higher on the landscape and water all those fodder trees that are in those swales on that hillside. Water those. Did you have blueberry bushes up on top, or?
Yeah, there's a bunch of blueberries up there. But we have IBC totes all the way up there. We've never needed the water. It's there. We have several, you know, cross cribbed up rail tie IBC totes. And and really, we could replace that pond with a 4,000 gallon water tank on the top corner and fill it with a hose while you know, if we have to. And then we've got that 30 by 30 catchment on the rabbit shed that we just terminate onto the ground right now. I mean, it goes into a 1,500 gallon tank, and then that overflows into the pond. But I mean, we've never had to use it.
Right. And that's the other thing is, in a wet, temperate climate, do you really need it? You know, there are a few situations with clients where I've said, you know, hey, swales would be a good situation in this particular location for your particular goals in Missouri, or in, you know, Eastern Tennessee or whatever, Western Tennessee. But with the caveat that you need to have a swivel pipe so you can get the water the heck out of it, because it's more often that you're going to have a problem with too much water than not enough water. And like John said, we've never needed it. So if you don't need it, why spend the money on, you know, why throw good money after bad, is what I'm saying.
Well, we're seeing that with the swales in the back. One of them is permanently full. I mean, full all the time. So we do need a way, like you said, a swivel pipe would do it. That would totally take care of it, because it is completely saturated right now.
Not surprised to hear that.
And the really cool thing about that is, you know, if you want the water in it, great. You just leave the swivel pipe vertical. If you don't want it, turn it sideways, and you don't have the water there anymore. So it can serve both purposes of retaining water or draining water. And a lot of people that are really negative on swales, I think they're kind of in a one-track mind with it. It's a water soakage system.
Yeah.
And they don't consider the fact that if you just put a swivel pipe in it, it's a water drainage system. It can do both things almost equally well. You'll get a little bit of soakage because it's dead level. But I mean, a little bit of soakage is generally a good idea because you'll have things planted just downhill of that can benefit from it.
I'm the what if guy, right? Always we never need it, but what if? And and you really saw an example of it 3 years ago, right? Maybe this is all shutting down. And that's what we looked at. Okay, if postage shuts off, if trucks, interstate commerce, what do we do? And that was the answer, right? We've never needed the water, but we're on city water here still. So we've always had water come out the faucet. Never has it been turned off unless we cut a pipe someplace. But if we need it, we have it, and we have it immediately, and we have it for a long time. Just like I don't need 100 rabbits, but we've got 60 rabbits here on any given day, and our overages, we just feed them to the dogs. I don't need hundreds of birds, but if we had to close the gates with very, very little input, we could continue to produce those things and knock them off every couple days and eat them if we have to. But right now, the overages, it just goes to, we have so many eggs. Employees have not bought eggs here for 3 years. We can't give them enough of them. So I don't even, the dirty ones, I don't even brush them up. Crack them right out there and just give them to the dogs. Like we don't have to feed the dogs anything hardly. So that's the thing, right? So we don't have to do it, but we have it if we ever need it. And you can come and see it. And there's an example of it.
Yeah. That's a excellent point. That's what I always tell my customers. We're always looking at not the what if because we think everything's going to go sideways, because I don't think everything's always going to go sideways. But the question always remains, how do we make this system work? If like Survival Podcast tagline, if times get tough, or even if they don't, right? If I design a system and that system is completely designed around the fact that I'm going to keep going to my job every day from 9 to 5 for the next 30 years, and that's what I've designed everything around, I've designed a broken system, because there could be an economic downturn and I get laid off. I could, I don't know, get in a car wreck and, well, I can't go to work anymore. Something can throw that out of whack if that one linchpin is broken. The food supply system, if, your idea is, I'm always gonna have access to a feed store, and my chickens are the backbone of my my whole
food system.
My whole food system, my whole homestead revolves around this big old flock of chickens, because I just love chickens. I'm a crazy chicken lady, and that's just what I love. Right?
Wait, go get your wig. Yeah. Be the chicken lady.
Well, the problem is if that whole system is designed around the idea that Tractor Supply is always going to have chicken laying pellets, and I don't have a backup solution to that, like John was just saying, that's just kind of dumb. So, we need to design in at least the capacity to kind of pare things down and ramp up. So, I bet John is mostly using commercial feed. I have no problem with that. But there needs to be some way to not buy rabbit pellets. Maybe we knock our breeding population down so that we're not holding so many over, and we have the capacity to instantly get those rabbits out of the cages and into rabbit tractors so that they can be harvesting their own if things completely went sideways, just to have the peace of mind that we can just pivot into that, and then have some fodder trees growing up. If nothing else, just look at what you have on site or locally. Find some willows locally. I guarantee you have them growing near you. You can always go in the wintertime. Right now is a great time.
Yep.
If you don't have the money, you're so shoestring budget right now that you don't have the money to buy fodder trees, go find some willows, learn to identify them, take some branches off them, and stick branches in the ground, and you'll grow new willow trees.
Yeah, I am literally going to go do that. I
Yeah.
have a willow tree fell in our creek, and so now a bunch of little willow trees have grown along the creek,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna pollard them, which then means I have all these willow branches in the
Perfect.
middle of winter that I can move them around. Now, it's not the hybrid willow that you sell, but it's willow and it's acclimated to the area.
It's
Done.
already there. It's got a big root system already established. It's not going to grow as fast as the hybrid willow, but what do you freaking care? It's already there. It's not even inside your property that you have to worry about it. If it's in like a wasteland area where no one's messing with it and you're just pruning bushes out in the woods, who cares? So I really like being the mentality of we can pivot and just instantly jump into much greater production, even if like for instance with John's situation, it makes financial sense and time management sense to buy commercial feed. It makes that makes sense to me right now with my situation.
Mhm.
I'm still buying commercial feed, even though I'm preaching fodder trees. I'm getting my fodder system developed and growing. We've got 800 plus trees in the ground. It makes more sense for me right now to sell cuttings from my fodder trees instead of feed those as livestock feed. But I've got the system in place. Later this year, when we're adding more and more rabbits, I'm going to have at least 15 breeders going. Well, we can be supplementing their feed with the fodder trees, and we have that system going, so we can pivot. I could knock down my breeder population just a little bit and have all of their needs met if something went sideways. So, being able to think about the what ifs, not because we expect everything to just go crazy tomorrow, not because we're looking for doomsday to happen, but because it lets us be prepared to pivot and adjust when things go sideways, because things always go sideways, always.
So we
go ahead, John.
We have tractors on the ground. We
Awesome.
do our grow outs on the ground. We have for a couple of years now.
Nice.
And right now we could put 50% on the ground, except there's just nothing growing on the ground right now.
Right.
And then the fodder trees, those 9 swales that we put in 400 trees. So we've got hybrid mulberry, we've got white mulberry, hybrid poplar, hybrid willow. We have, your stuff. So that's in motion. But yeah, pelletized feed, way simpler right now.
It's so easy. Easy.
But if the time comes when we have to feed those animals fodder, well, then something has happened and there's not feed coming in. But right now, I maintain all of the animals in about 20 minutes on the entire property.
Right. And that is a very, very, very important thing that I want people to not get so romanticized into thinking that, hey, the fodder thing, it's free food for my livestock.
Yeah.
Is it free food? Because in John's situation, in John's situation,
it's really expensive food if John is harvesting it.
Exactly. It's very expensive. If John has to miss out on thousands of dollars of income because he's out there managing fodder trees, it's nonsensical for John to be out there managing fodder trees to feed his rabbits for free when he doesn't need all of that production. It makes way more sense to put your time and effort into something that's going to make you 10 times as much, and then 1/10 of the cost going towards your livestock feed. That's what I say in all of my presentations on fodder trees. Do not get so wrapped up in the romantic idea of, we're just going to throw seed balls out there and we're just going to go pick the food because it's just going to grow and we're just going to be in harmony with nature. Don't get so wrapped up into that romantic idea that you lose sight of reality.
That's kind of how I am about my vegetable garden. I have this picture of how awesome and manicured it's going to be every year, and it turns into the same gnarl every single year. I get food off of it, but it does not look pretty by the end of the summer.
Yeah. Just that way the first few weeks.
I'm going to be out there weeding every day.
Yeah, just be realistic about things and take honest assessment of what you actually have time to do and what it actually makes sense to do. Because like John said, it's so much simpler and easier to just get a pallet full of bad commercial feed delivered, because that's probably what you can get done where you live. And it's just forks, lift it off and set it under a shed, and then 20 minutes a day and I'm done with that. And it's a little bit of it's kind of like mental health stuff. I get to go out there, I get to take care of my animals a little bit, kind of disconnect with the business side of things, reset your brain a little bit, and then blow and go again. So don't get so keyed up by we can be 100% independent that you literally paint yourself into a corner where you're not able to do nearly as much to get yourself independent, because you're tying yourself to systems that would be enormously beneficial if things went completely sideways. But right now, they're not really beneficial.
Although I can say that the one labor not intensive thing we're doing with fodder trees at this point is in the middle of summer, whacking them and throwing them on the ground, and the sheep eat them.
Chop and drop it.
Just not even worrying about it. And then later there's stick collection because they don't eat the sticks. But that was happening just because in Tennessee we have the box elder tree that livestock will eat. My sheep will eat it. My goats love it. And especially when we didn't have a lot of rain this summer, it was like, okay, another handful of box elder for everybody, because it was right there. It was easy to do. But those things plant themselves. Like I pull them out of my garden every year. Like I was up there last weekend and they were that tall from the little whirly things that come down off those trees. So
we have them growing in the foam in the aquaponics system.
Yeah.
Under the cover.
Not surprised. They'll take over everything. But the livestock love them, and I haven't lost livestock to those. So, Tactical says, and the privet. So, yes, we still have privet here, even though we have ruminants, but they love it. So,
some people say it's toxic. I've never had animals have a problem with it, but they've never been exclusively eating it. So, I'm honestly not nearly as worried. In the I don't know how many decades I've had goats. All these poisonous plants that people say will just knock your goats dead if they take one bite of it. I think it's mostly ridiculous. I've even had goats eat cherry and what's the poison hemlock, and people read online, they eat one bite of it, they're gonna drop dead. I've never had a problem with that.
I think the animals kind of know, and most of that comes from people saying something that they read online, and half of them saying it don't even have any goats. Like you see it all the time, man. You can't make a pot pie without cast iron, according to who,
Yeah. So someone posted it on a blog somewhere, and then everyone else copied it, and nobody vetted it out, and it's just been copied so much that now it's just generally accepted as true.
And half of it's like telephone. I mean, the sentence is going to change by the third person. Somebody just embellishes it. It's like Jack said, how many people will give you some medical advice and they're like, well, my wife's sister's cousin is a nurse. They always qualify it with that. Not that it came from that, just that they know a nurse.
One step closer blames Chat GPT, just for the record. Speaking of our recent interview, it's funny because I've been digging into the cherry leaf poisoning thing because I have cherry trees in my food forest system. I have a wild cherry tree on my property under which a sheep did die last year. And so I'm trying to figure out like how much, if it's really a thing, because it's supposed to be cyanide poisoning from those leaves, and only if they're wilted. Well, how many leaves? Is like one leaf going to do it? Probably not. So it's like if they mow on it, and usually animals don't eat things that poison them in high volume unless there's no other alternative. So, but because I have cherry trees around, I just want to know. So, and I haven't been able to find great information on that. I find warnings from extension offices with no research attached, and then stories of people where their animals have eaten cherry leaves and it hasn't been a problem, and then unverifiable others. It's kind of like, have you guys heard about the Tractor Supply feed problem? So I've had a lot of email about this where Tractor Supply chicken feed for layers, chickens who are eating it aren't laying eggs. And so it could be a thing, right? But whenever I hear a story like that, I react with heavy skepticism and start looking for actual source data, because I'm not going to start a panic over this. And it's not really something that affects me. So like, why do I really want to dig into it? Because I don't use their feed, right? The funny thing is, what I didn't know is we were in between feed suppliers and we used one bag of it. And timing wise, we went from that to the new feed source and the eggs started coming. Huh?
The sun. Finish up. I got a lot to say about this.
Yeah. And then I'm like, well, maybe that is a thing. My birds were already not laying though, because of the time of year.
Yep.
And it's about time for them to start laying. So I don't know. So it's like kind of funny. And then I've seen no like actual tests for the supposed missing nutrients. So I'm not going to further that panic, but I am going to say you want to have quality feed sources.
Yeah.
If you're going to get external feed. And for me, thank God for Tractor Supply having the feed that they have, but that's not the feed I want to use. But sometimes when, our one feed stores in Tennessee that had soy-free feed stopped doing it, we had to scramble to find another soy-free option. And I didn't know it until it was time to reorder. They didn't like send out an announcement. They were just like, nope, we don't do that anymore. Okay, well, great. But now we're cool. Now we're like down the rabbit trail of do we just start making feed? Well, I'm not going to start making feed, but maybe some other holler neighbors will. John, what do you got?
So this happens every year, right?
Yeah.
And I remember last year before, I remember hearing Tractor Supply feed. I don't know if that's the case or not, but when everybody started, and you're hearing it more, it's ramping up. It's a big snowball right now. But they started saying this 7, 8 weeks ago. It also coincided when it was freezing everywhere across the United States.
Yeah.
Solar cycle is down. I added in black oil sunflower. I wasn't using Tractor Supply feed.
Yeah.
All of my production, it wasn't in half. It was like a quarter, but it was super, super cold. So we added in black oil sunflower, and I added in some diatomaceous earth and a few other little things. And they started producing more eggs next week. You know what also happened the next week? It wasn't 0-degree temperature. We were back up to 40-degree temperature. So maybe there is something insidious or something has changed with Tractor Supply. Who knows? But why are you using Tractor Supply feed anyways? It's literally next to buying it at a pet shop. It is the most fucking expensive thing that you can buy. Go buy, and you don't need, I'm going to get corn. You can get corn in super sacks. They'll put it on your truck with a forklift. You might not be able to get it out, but you can do it in 5-gallon buckets, right? Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to go buy a $1,000 grinder. No. Your chickens will eat whole corn. You don't have to grind it. They have this thing, and they eat rocks, right? It's what that does, the gizzard. So
you can ferment it, and they'll eat it more.
Yeah, you can ferment any of it, right? So go get oats, not oatmeal. Oats for people who feed it to horses and shit. Oats, groats. Get corn, right? Now your corn, it's all going to be Monsanto corn. Any of that corn that's being out there, they round it up. They round it up before they spray it. They spray it before they harvest it because it reduces the moisture in it. Same thing with wheat. You're not getting any wheat unless you have some organic farmer or maybe some, Mennonites or something. But big ag, all that shit is going to be sprayed with Roundup. So know that going into it. But you could add the cheapest dog food you can find. Old dog food. Your chickens will eat anything. They eat bugs and poop all summer long. They will eat literally anything. But the whole Tractor Supply thing, you saw all these small prepper channels and homestead channels 3 years ago, and they just started making really clickbait, sensational 2-minute videos. And you watched them grow from, they had 5,000 followers for 6 years. And now all of a sudden they have hundreds of thousands of followers. Right. But it's always that, and they just circular report. You'll see the one guy, and you know that when this dude makes that video, you're going to see 2 weeks later, this guy makes the video. Yep. Like, what do you give a shit Who is using Tractor Supply feed? I go to Tractor Supply several times a week, but I'm not buying feed there. I go there out of convenience for certain things. But if you're buying feed at Tractor Supply, like, you got a ton of money or you have no money because you're doing that.
End rant. That was a good one, John. Yeah.
It's just like,
crunch the numbers, find out what you're actually paying for.
they don't.
I would never buy feed from Tractor Supply. I think I have like twice in my life because that was the only option. I think one time I was on the road picking up some livestock. I just ran across a client with extra livestock and we bartered for some fodder trees. And so I got to bring home some extra livestock. Well, I didn't have any feed for the animals. So where did I go? The only place that was convenient was a Tractor Supply. Well, I don't care if it's one bag of feed just to get me home. But when you crunch the numbers, like John was saying,
Yeah.
if you have any way possible to buy more in bulk, especially whole grain feed, man, you're going to save so much stinking money.
Yeah, if you get on Marketplace and just search corn or oats, when you're out at Home Depot and you see those big giant white bags of sand,
Yep.
Those are super sacks. And when you buy corn, they will sell it to you in a super sack. Man, you save less than half the price of just bagged corn, just buying volume of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's not difficult to store, even in higher humidity areas. You build a corn crib and you line it in plastic and you put it in there and you keep it dry and you have whole corn. That stuff will store way better, way longer than ground corn. The ground corn is going to absorb a ton of moisture and it's going to mold. And
like black oil sunflower seed right now at Tractor Supply, it's $28 a bag.
What?
$28
Holy
a bag
cow.
for the 40, and they're not 50-pound bags anymore.
No, everything's shrinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dog food bags have shrunk too, but we're transitioning towards raw over time.
Yep. Awesome. Turn those box elder
we have
leaves.
had the rabbits born twice on this homestead in the last 30 days.
Awesome.
It only took me a year and a half.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that I think a lot of people just don't even contemplate, maybe they're just completely unaware of it. Chickens are pretty much like tiny velociraptors.
Yeah.
If you have extra rabbits, you can literally just gut it, feed the guts to a compost bin or a black soldier fly larva bin, and you can just toss the carcass in there and the chickens will strip it of meat.
Yep.
They will turn those.
They'll eat the guts.
Yeah, they will.
They'll eat grass.
Yeah, every time we catch mice, we feed them to the chickens.
Yep.
Every time we have wire-born babies that are froze from the rabbits, we just feed them. They just rip them apart. They literally, if you've never seen this, catch mice in a live catch trap, give them to your chickens. They will run each other down and play tug of war. They will literally rip those mice into 4 or 5 pieces, and they'll be running around with them.
Chasing each other.
Yeah.
We are very lucky that they are not bigger than us.
Yeah, and so this back to that food independence thing. It always comes down to, how do we get those animals fed so that they're little velociraptors? How do we get those animals fed so that they can feed us? And it always comes back to the fodder trees thing. I know I sound like a broken record, but man, it always comes back down to that. If I can grow that for free and feed those rabbits, I can feed those rabbits to my dogs and get almost completely independent of the feed store by transforming sunlight and water, rainfall, into leaves, into rabbits, into 24/7, 365 security detail. Now, granted, it's a low intelligence security detail, but it's a terrifying security detail patrolling my property. all night, every day.
We took the entire gut pile out of the pig, put it in the chicken pen. It stunk for a couple of days. By the end of the week, everything was gone. The skull was completely picked clean. It looked like we had bleached the skull. It just works, man. It works so well.
Yep.
That is why we are adding chickens back to my homestead this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I phased out chickens because they destroy everything if you free range them. Mm-hmm. And now we are building a system that is intended for growing feed sorts of plants like squashes for livestock,
mm-hmm.
and composting, and then I'll get eggs out of it, and that's chickens, so that it's sort of that victory garden thing where they're on one side for 1 year and one on the other. But with the elimination of pigs, I have a livestock composting problem if I don't add something back. So I'm adding the chickens because it's really nice with the pigs. It's just like they just eat everything.
Mm-hmm.
Under the rabbits, we keep our rabbits elevated in cages on sawhorses, and they're in a pen. They're protected by fence, right? So we can't get a tractor in there real easy anymore. So I put cement trays under all the rabbit pens, and ideally every week, but sometimes I go every 2 weeks. Those cement trays are full of manure. I have a 10 by 10 compost bin that's about 4 feet tall right now with manure, just by tossing those in there. It adds up super fast, and you can use it directly. So, when everybody's starting raised bed gardens, use Miracle-Gro. It's going to grow great the first year. It's not going to grow worth anything the second. But you put that rabbit manure, you've got your mass now. You put that rabbit manure in there, and it energizes it, and it'll grow better than it did the first year with the Miracle-Gro. Just get started, man, and everything gets used. Everything.
Yeah, that's it's the backbone of everything is turning sunlight into plants, into soil, into food, whether that's vegetable matter or meat. That's the cycle.
And the biggest thing we did, like for the garden in the last few years, it starts off really, really well early in the year, and then it just gets cooked. So just having the ability to put shade cloth, man, it just comes back to life for another 3 months. Just having the shade cloth.
Mm-hmm.
My latest trick is to pressure cook bones when I'm done with them and feed those to the pigs.
Why do you pressure cook them?
To debrittleize them.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people don't, but I don't, I don't really want one of my dogs getting their hands on a chicken bone and ripping themselves up. So I was just like, well, I'll put it in the pressure cooker once I'm done with the bone broth. We make a lot of bone broth here. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I've got some questions. First, is Nick sold out of fodder trees? Nick, is Nick sold out of fodder trees?
I am sold out of bare root trees for the year. However, I just harvested all the tops out of my hybrid poplar and hybrid willow, and I'm going to have those available for sale in the next couple weeks, and we'll be bundling those up and selling bundles of those. So we will have the unrooted. Probably by the time you get them, they might actually be rooted, but I'm selling them as
They're
unrooted.
willows.
Yeah, they root so quick and easy that seriously, guys, people hear that they're unrooted and they think, well, this is going to take me years to get a tree. You might get about 25% less growth the first year versus putting them in the ground as a bare root tree. And you'll get them for about half the cost. So you get twice as many trees with like 25% less growth, but it's twice as many trees. So I'm not going to do math on a live video. But that's a whole lot more than if you were that's a whole lot more growth in the first year than if you were buying their bare root trees. I'll have those available. If you missed out on the fodder tree packs, I really encourage you to get in on those the cuttings, because they're as simple. If you have soft soil, they're as simple as going out there with a rubber mallet and sticking the stick on the ground where you want it to go in the ground and tapping it a few times and getting it 4 to 6 inches in the ground and waiting a few months, and you're going to have a new tree growing.
People don't realize that you could take a willow tree just out in anywhere, cut it off, leave it for dead, and come back, and all those branches that touch the ground, you won't be able to pick that thing up or drag it.
Yep.
Because everywhere it touched has rooted. It literally is that easy. If you have one that's really heavy and the canopy is touching the ground, that thing grows another tree. You could cut it off and you have everywhere it touches.
They'll tip layer themselves. Yeah.
I tried to get trees from Nick a couple of times, and he's like, "It's so easy. Why don't you just do this?"
Yeah. One of the really cool things you can do with especially the willow, if you're growing those in a coppice system and you're growing them for the purpose of firewood, well, you're going to get them about 4 inches in diameter before you harvest them for firewood. Well, here's the cool thing. If you have need of fence posts or instant trees, let that willow get about 3-4 inches in diameter, cut it into an 8-foot chunk of trunk, drill or dig a fence post hole, and jab that sucker in the ground, pack around it just like it's a fence post. If you do that in the winter, it's going to root along the trunk. It's going to send out roots. It's going to send out shoots, and it's going to grow a whole new living fence post right there. So you could literally put up a fence of living trees and have an instant privacy screen that's going to be 12, 15 feet tall in the first year. And you know, if you're thinking about this kind of from a, you know, what if Mad Max scenarios? Well, imagine you've got a little fodder forest on the back acre or two, and you've got those stuck there, and something crazy goes sideways, and you want an instant vehicle barrier deterrent. Well, you could just go in and cut a whole bunch of those jokers down and jab them in the ground in a staggered formation, and all of a sudden you've got an instant, pretty much vehicle proof, or really going to slow down a vehicle
resistant.
Right. Yeah. So
we talked about that in the video we did, Nick, when we were doing the property walk. We talked a lot about that.
Yeah. So there's just so many cool things that you can do with these trees and these plants that you know, if you just think outside the box a little bit, you'll come up with some amazing stuff.
Is letting dandelions and nettles grow a valid backup plan for rabbits and ducks?
No. I mean, you'll get
it is a valid backup plan for humans, though.
We have a lot of, any place we have shade early in the year, as soon as it starts to warm up, we'll have clover that's 20 inches thick, and it comes back. And when I move the rabbits, a lot of times I have an auto seeder that's just battery operated, and I'll have white clover and red clover and deer forage, and I'll seed that stuff. So within a week, it's growing. If you can keep your chickens off of it, it'll grow back up. So within, you know, a couple months, we can go back through that pass. But any place there's shade for the first 90 days, when it warms up, there's just clover everywhere, like so much that the rabbits can't even eat it. It'll just come back. So if you want something for your rabbits, add clover in there. You're never going to wish you hadn't. You're not going to mind having it, and it's going to repair soil while it's going too.
Yeah.
But I have heard tell, and it's not verified, that the crimson clover isn't great for sheep, for what that's worth.
I've heard all clover. I thought all clover bloats sheep. I'd heard.
I don't know. We have clover everywhere, and we did have a few bloat issues early on, but I don't know. It just grows. That's the thing.
Yeah, it can be quite a problem for sheep, especially goats to a lesser extent, but almost as bad. Cattle don't have nearly the problem with the clover. I think horses have a little bit of problem with clover, but I'm not sure. I've never really been interested in money pits.
So why is clover in like every pasture mix ever, if the ruminants have trouble with it?
Well, it's not a large portion in every. Normally, it's no more than 10%. But when you have a grassy area that's not grassy, it's just a clover area where it's 75%. Well, that's a ton of protein, and too much of that all at once can mess up the gut microbiome, and then that's when you get those bloating issues.
If you see an animal here alive, you know that is a strong animal.
Yeah. John doesn't have the duck quarantine area that I have right now. He did,
No.
and I'm pretty sure he didn't bring his rabbits in when it was 0 degrees.
No,
but I brought my baby rabbits in.
Yeah, you'll mess your rabbits up with that shit. If you put heat on your rabbits and birds, you are asking for problems in the future with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
rabbits.
I couldn't leave them out. Those 1 week old little babies.
We have a layer of ice everywhere this morning.
Yeah.
We were 20 degrees last night. My rabbits are out there. They have nest boxes. There's not a rabbit in a nest box. If we give it straw, they chew it and throw it out. Like we give them something to try to be warm, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And they just wreck it.
Yeah,
man, rabbit fur mittens and hats are the warmest freaking thing you could ever ask for.
It's so funny when they give birth. It's just like there's this puff ball of fur that the rabbit has pulled off.
And as the rabbits get bigger, you will watch the mom squash that fur down so that it doesn't hold as much heat. It's not the bunnies doing it, moving around. Right. Mom does that because she's trying to kick them out of the nest. And a lot of people say as soon as those rabbits are a couple of weeks old, turn the nest box sideways so that they start having excursions and then getting out of there so they build up a tolerance.
Yeah. Interesting.
Cool.
Hadn't heard that one.
Yep.
We're weaning our first ones right now, so they're getting removed from mama. Okay, ideally in zone 7, how many fodder trees could you put on half an acre?
I'd have to crunch the numbers, but if I'm growing them intensively, then I'm probably going to have trees in rows, probably no closer than about 8 feet. I like around 10 feet. And I'd be looking for end goal spacings to be between 2 and 4 feet apart in the rows. So, a tree every 2 to 4 feet in the rows. The nice thing with a lot of these, if you get started with just a little bit, especially of the willow and poplar, it's as simple as just cutting them down to the ground every year and taking everything that you grew that previous year, cutting it into 12-inch pieces and planting more rows out. Like you can end up with thousands and thousands of trees that way, and it takes you nothing but a little bit of time. So I'd kind of measure out the area and see how many 10-foot rows you can fit in there. If you can do it on contour, it makes maintenance easier because it's easier to walk on level ground than up and down hills. It's easier to mow. It's easier to do everything if you do things on contour, unless just your boundaries are just so wonky that it'd make it a nightmare to get through. You're probably looking at a couple thousand trees. I don't know. I'd have to do the math.
So it depends.
It depends. Yeah, it depends. But normally when people are asking that, they're trying to think, how do I get to year 5 in my development plan in month 2? If you really need to get a larger system put in quickly, sign up for a distance consult, and we can crunch the numbers and find out exactly what you need to be working with and where to source those trees. But if you're just getting into this and getting your toes wet, I'd start out with a couple dozen trees.
Go slow.
Go slow, get them put in, because you might find out after the first year of dabbling in it that either A, it's not for you, or B, hey, the location I was thinking about is not actually ideal. I want to put them somewhere else.
15 years ago, I put in fruit trees here in the goat pasture. They are now dead because goats eat them.
Yep.
Just spoiler alert. I didn't have goats 15 years ago, so they lived for a while, but I was up there the other day. I'm like, I have one pear tree up there that's left, and it was a horrible location for them. Just
where you want it is never where it needs to be.
Yeah, that's not. And it was like, I need it way far away from the house where I never look at it, right?
Our friend Bob put in 5 acres of fodder trees.
Wow.
Nick, you've seen that property. And he did it as a corn maze, right? So it's it's like over in jolly old England, the big mazes, but it's all fodder trees. It'll be badass when it takes off.
That sounds really fun, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be really fun, but maintenance is going to be
Harder.
Well, the
Hey.
beauty of that is equipment is a force multiplier, right? We start off and do all kinds of crazy stuff
Yeah.
with a shovel and a wheelbarrow. But if you can do it when you have a tractor, while it costs more, it is so much cheaper when you look at it over, a couple of years. So Bob will just push all that with a dozer or an excavator, or he'll get another thing to do whatever it is that needs doing. But it'll be cool.
Oh yeah, that's going to be really cool.
Oh, this one's a good one. Can you use nitrogen fixing shrubs instead of nitrogen fixing trees in a food forest?
Yes, you can.
Let's talk about nitrogen fixers. Big picture first.
Yeah. So the big picture thing with the nitrogen fixers, okay, this is just going to be my personal opinion and my personal experience. I think that's one of those P word, permaculture word,
Purple permaculture.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people get really excited about, and they overblow the importance of and the value in, and they think that it's going to be this silver bullet, this magic tree or bush that they can throw into the system, and it does all the work for them, and it's just magical, and it's lovely and magical. They do a little bit. I sell nitrogen fixers. I sell
I'm free.
Yep, I really like false indigo, as long as you keep it away from livestock. I love false indigo because it doesn't get massive, and it's great for chop and drop. It makes great mulch. It makes great high nitrogen mulch. So it's good for that, but it's not a silver bullet. It's like the difference between cheap tires and expensive tires. Cheap tires are going to get you there
eventually,
pretty much the same as the expensive tires. The expensive tires are going to last longer, and you might have a smoother ride, and there might be less of a chance of a defect internally and them just exploding on the highway. I buy the most expensive tires I can put on my vehicle because I need them to work. And normally if you buy expensive, it's going to last longer, and you're going to end up spending less money in the long run. But they're not silver bullets. It's not magic. So yes, you can use nitrogen fixers in your food forests and stuff. Is it worth the space and the maintenance and the extra work that's going to go into it? In my opinion, most people in most situations would be far better served just, pushing some animals through there once a year and dropping a little bit of manure. I think you'll get far more nitrogen with a little bit of manure spread over that whole acre or area than you would with the nitrogen fixers, because the idea that they're going to be just dropping all this nitrogen all of the time because the root nodules create some nitrogen. Well, yes, they do a little bit, but those root nodules are not producing all of the nitrogen that plant needs. That plant, if there's nitrogen available, will still take it up and use it. They might just take up less nitrogen than another tree. But they're not sitting there just willy-nilly making it rain with nitrogen for all the other trees around them. And if you cut them down, and you kill the tree, all that nitrogen's released.
Yeah.
So don't get romanticized about the nitrogen fixers.
Could you just run through with buckets of rabbit manure and just
that would do far more for soil fertility.
That might have happened in the holler.
Yeah. So most people, like you said, can you just run through with some rabbit manure? Most people, they're trying to build an orchard and they think, I need a food forest. Well, really, you don't need a food forest. You need an orchard. And instead of having all these, I don't want to disparage other people's successes and the things that they've, made their name on. But, if you live in Canada, for instance, and you have a really cool permaculture food forest orchard guild thing set up that works really well in Canada, well, you're in a cold, temperate climate. That doesn't work in West Texas. That doesn't translate. So don't model something in one climate and think it's going to work well for you in a different climate. And don't model something that someone's doing broadacre and think that translates to a quarter of an acre. So we don't want to take industrial ag, 2,000, 6,000, 10,000 acre fields and try and translate that down to a quarter of an acre garden. There's some principles that will work, but most of them, they just don't translate. It's not intelligent. So just because the nitrogen fixers work in some situations does not mean that they are a good solution in all situations. So
yeah,
with all that,
and the question was, can I use shrubs instead of trees?
right. So with all that said,
Mhm.
yes, you can use the shrubs instead of the trees. I do. But the question that you need to ask is, do you need to use them in the first place? Or would that space actually be better served growing something that you can feed to an animal that's going to make more manure than that nitrogen fixer would be dropping in the form of nitrogen? So I would encourage people, throw a couple fodder trees into your food forest and coppice those or pollard those and use that to feed your rabbits, and then use the rabbit manure to put the nitrogen in your food forest. I think you'll get far more done with far more, it'll be more efficient and more productive.
I've got comfrey in mine and I use it.
Yeah.
So how close can comfrey go to your fruit trees?
Oh, the comfrey, I mean, that can be
right up
against it. Yeah. I mean, that comfrey can be shading out the root crown of your trees and providing a nice, cool root zone area for those fruit trees. And that's one of the things that is most important for your fruit bearing bushes and trees, is having a cool root zone, cool, moist root zone. Now, here's one of the things that you have to be careful of with the comfrey. Comfrey are heavy feeders. A lot of people think that, it's just this magical permaculture guild plant that I can just put anywhere and it's going to work perfect. Well, they're heavy feeders. They take a lot of nitrogen out of the soil. Well, if you're just recycling that nitrogen right back to the soil, great. You're ending up with a net increase. But if you're harvesting that and exporting it somewhere else, you're just mining nitrogen out of your soil, and your fruit tree or bush, berry bush, whatever, is going to suffer for it. So, if you are being cognizant of the fact that, hey, if we're exporting, we need to be importing at least equal to it just to maintain parity, then that'll work. But just make sure that you're not, harvesting all those comfrey leaves and not bringing nitrogen back in.
Ideally, you want to chop and drop a lot of that.
Yeah. Chop and drop it. That's fantastic. That'll they regenerate really quick too.
Yeah, they do. They're coming back right now. They're this big.
Yep. I've got a bunch of them coming up that most of my comfrey is around about 8 inches now, and putting on some good growth. But yeah, if you just kind of go through there and you scythe it down, or you just run over it with a lawnmower and just kind of mulch it down, that'll be fantastic.
Yeah, we've got hundreds of comfrey crowns and stuff out in the swales all over.
Yeah.
Strawberries and daffodils and everything's out there.
Yeah. I'm going to be curious if your rosemary lived through the winter.
My rosemary always, even in raised beds, my rosemary
really,
lives
gosh,
through the winter.
Unfair. One of my favorite cooking herbs, and I kill it every year. I'm pretty sure it died again this year in that 5 degree or 0 degree thing that happened. We'll see.
I've had so much trouble getting rosemary to grow here. I can't
Yeah.
keep rosemary alive. I can't keep horseradish alive. This year, though, my rosemary made it. I think I'm going to have rosemary next year.
Yeah, mine's not looking great, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, it'll be
But now
covered
we
in
have another
snow and
ice storm coming, so who knows?
Yeah, it'll be covered in snow and ice, and every year that and mint. You can't kill mint. You can't. The rosemary keeps going.
Oh, here's how you kill
can.
mint, John. You separate it from any access to water at all for about 2 years, and it actually does die after that.
We had it. My guy was making. He put a big griddle right next to the raised bed, and it was torching it. Like it would just. I'm like, oh, maybe that mint's dead, and boom! Like a couple of weeks later, it's just right back. I'm pretty sure he was pouring hot grease in there. I don't know what he was doing with it, but it continues to go.
The Redneck Report from the Holler says that we may have one rosemary plant here that has shown signs that it has made it through most of the first half of our winter. In breaking news.
Nice.
If I would have planted that many rosemary plants last year for last winter, it would have been a whole different story. But then it might not have liked the super dry summer and me not watering things. So I don't like to water things.
Me neither.
This causes things to perish on my property. But I have this one. So I have the rock wall I've redone. You've both seen it. In between each rock is like, if you're talking about permaculture, the edge, right? Where things like to grow. So crack weeds are a problem, right? Unless you put chocolate mint in the cracks, which makes a really good tea. So I had this really vibrant chocolate mint plant started there last year, and I'm hoping it overwinters this year and I can spread it to all the other cracks because I thought it was a great crack solution. That's my crack solution, for the record.
Nice.
Okay. Next question is, how much fire mitigation do you, Nick, take into account when you're planning? And I do want to call out 30-day reviews because I saw that you are typoing the heck out of your comments because you're on the treadmill while you're listening to this. And I think that's awesome that you're on a treadmill while you're listening to this because I'm sure that's getting you towards a goal that you have.
Nice. Yeah, so how much fire mitigation do I take into account? Well, it really just boils down to the overarching goal. It's never been a primary focus. Sometimes it's been a strong concern and a strong focus, but it's never been the primary one. Whenever we have a situation where swales would be appropriate, that's always just one of those tack it on. Hey, this is one of the other benefits, especially if we can link it up to a pond. So if we have a swale, especially during in the direction of a fire sector. So if prevailing winds in the summer are coming from, let's just say, the west, and we have a west facing slope, and there's a good location for a pond or a pond already existing, and we can just dig a wing of a swale out from it, then that's just one of those things that I always tell my clients, I always encourage people, whenever you have a swale winging off of a pond, what you need to do is you need to go down to the shoulder of where that swale and pond join up. So right where that pond and the swale meet, it's a good idea to put yourself a little shed down there. It can be just like a 4-foot square shed with a little roof, and have one of those gas powered water pumps. It's like a 2 to 4 inch inlet outlet water pump. And all you do is you'd want to keep stabilized fuel down there or handy. Don't have any unstabilized fuel in that tank. And the last time you run it, you need to run it dry so that you don't have fuel in the lines gumming things up. But if you have stabilized fuel in that and you use it once a year and you just run it dry, it should be good just year in, year out, ready and sitting there and waiting. So if you have that pre-staged, that's step one. Step two would be get yourself enough sandbags filled with sand, ready to go. Make sure that they do the job. And you want about 2 to 4 inches of water retention. So have enough sandbags to cross your swale from the downhill to the uphill. Basically, put a little dam in, and all you do is you drop your inlet for your pump into the pond and your outlet right on the side, right on the other side of those sandbags. And you can drain water out of your pond and fill up your swale. So in the event that there is a forest fire coming your way or a grass fire or whatever, well, one of the big lines of defense that would take literally just 5 minutes of work is you already have those sandbags pre-staged. You want to keep them covered so that they're UV protected. And all you have to do is just throw them out, crank up the pump, and start it flowing water while you're putting the sandbags in place. And in 5 minutes, you could have that pump just running and filling up that trough. And then you can go up and then address some other concerns, get your mower out and cut the tall grass down. So those are one of the big fire mitigation benefits to us, an earthworks like that. But as far as, do I ever have projects where, forest fires are a major concern? Not really, because I don't ever go to California.
Ever. I was just there a week ago. So something about California. I have a cousin who has a ranch in California, a cattle ranch. And she rotationally grazes the cattle. So doing what you should do with ruminants. And they don't use all of the land in their ranch for this. The last time wildfires came through and they had to evacuate, they were like, gosh, we hope we have cattle when we get back, first of all. And they did. She sent me a picture, and where they rotationally graze was still green and unburnt. Yep. And you could see the line where they were not grazing, and it was black. And so that wildfire came through there, and it was just like boop over it and kept going. So just managing your land in a responsible way can do a lot to help. It's not going to save you from every disaster. Like my other cousin was in the Paradise fire and lost everything. That was just too much all at once coming through. But it's amazing how being a good steward of the land makes it more resilient against naturally occurring fires, which are a thing in nature.
And exactly. Right back to the whole, the swales, they're not a magic bullet. The nitrogen fixers, they're not a magic bullet. Putting in swales for fire prevention, that's not a magic bullet. It's one small component. And when you have a whole bunch of those parts working together, like you said, with proper grazing, rotational grazing, you're just going to have a healthier, more resilient ecosystem. And, if you're building up that soil, you're increasing the soil depth and you're sequestering a whole bunch of carbon, not because it's going to save any baby seals or polar bears, but because it's going to make your soil healthier and more resilient and hold more water. Then you're going to have grass that's greener and has more water in it. Well, wet green grass don't burn very good. Yeah. So, all these little things stacked up can combine into, you might have a 50% less chance of your farm burning down if you implement all these things. It's not going to save you in every single situation, but it sure can help with more minor scenarios.
Yeah. Okay. John, do you know what your next project is on SOE? Have you decided?
No.
Is it to put the swivel pipe in your...
Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah, the other ones are all big.
Yeah.
The other ones they're big.
Not ready to deal with the pond yet?
No, I'm not ready to start it and then not have the manpower to follow through with it. I'm not doing that right now.
Yeah.
So it'll be little projects right now.
That makes sense. Little tweaks can do a lot though. Like we did a lot of big stuff last year. Last 6 months, I guess 4 months, it's been just a little here and there, and it's making a much nicer visual impact on the property and making it just easier to maintain. So it's amazing how those little tweaks can just make your whole life easier.
Well, I mean, it works right now.
Yeah.
I mean, as it is, everything is working right now, just
Yeah.
the way it is. I'm really just making changes for the sake of making changes and to have content around making the changes. So, I mean, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little side hustle business at John's that's never been started in the surplus he's creating being sold and then fed back into the system. That it doesn't make sense for John to go sell eggs, but it seems like somebody could sell eggs from there. But nobody does, do they?
No, we don't need to. Like,
Yeah.
people are so busy stepping over dollars to pick up dimes.
Yeah.
Constantly. People are so stuck in this. We need to do how do I make money? I can give you 1,000 ways to make money, but I can also give you 10 other ways that anybody could do to make real money. But they're so busy chasing all these little things to make a very little bit of money, when as if they just put the effort into one or two real things for 3 to 5 years, we're talking millions as opposed to thousands. And that's just how it is. People want to show progress and do this thing because we're always chasing the new shiny thing, but they're never going to have any real amount of money to just be able to do everything that they want to do. And that's a lot of this world, especially the homestead and the prepper world, is their super, super poverty mindset, almost like it's a badge of honor to not have any money. And that's not what I'm doing. We're doing other stuff.
That's a really important point because as somebody who I think I finally don't have a poverty mindset. I don't know for sure, but I've been working on that since 2016. The changes I've seen in my life since 2016 are amazing.
Yeah.
But I always feel like there's more that I need to do to change to get better. And it becomes so internalized as part of your personality and a badge of pride to get, the best deal or whatever, that you can spend way too much time on that.
Yeah.
And then you never see the opportunities. And that's something I've been trying to think, like, how do I explain that on the podcast? That, cutting off your nose to spite your face is not helping you.
We have a private podcast, and we talk about this a lot. I always talk about, okay, let's start this thing and take it out to fruition, and what does it look like? And a lot of that, like the egg production, we don't need the egg production. I eat about a dozen eggs a day. We feed all the employees breakfast that want to eat. We feed all the employees lunch that want to eat. And I have a huge surplus of eggs, right? So could I sell them? I absolutely could sell them. We could go on the local group and buy everybody's eggs and sell them for $2. So there are no $2 eggs out in the market. And we could sell ours for $4 to $6. And we would literally market $4 eggs and $6 eggs. And I would sell more $6 eggs probably than $4 eggs, but we'd still pick some of those up since it's a destination and they're coming here. I don't need to deal with them though. Like if I have people come here, now I have strangers that know there's a bunch of animals down in this bowl right here that's protected. You can't see from the road. And now I have to worry about who has access. Or something else I always see in the poultry groups and the rabbit groups are, I had somebody come pick up rabbits and they called the Animal Protection Agency and somebody came out and now they're telling me my cages have to be bigger or I have to have special house boxes for my chickens. There's always some nonsense when you open yourself up to that. Could we do it? We absolutely could do it. Do I need to do it? It would cost me more money to do it than to just crack the eggs and give them to the dogs and feed the dogs.
But here's a question. If one of your employees is like, hey, I want to start a side hustle, would you let them do it?
No, because I pay them more than they could possibly make to do this.
Okay, fair.
Like my employees are employees here, and I pay them more than they've probably ever made anywhere else. And I guarantee I pay them more than they could go out and deal with it. Plus, then there's that whole question of where did these come from?
Yeah.
Like it's just not worth me doing it locally. It's just not needed.
And there's a lesson in that.
Yeah, it's protection is what it is, because what look at the gun right stuff, right? Who
Yeah.
is the biggest enforcer of that shit? Gun people. They're constantly, you can't do this. Look at homesteading is great, right? You want to see some
yeah.
crazy shit. Ask people what caging you should have to use for your rabbits. We're in meat rabbit groups, but there's constantly you need to take them out and play with them. And you need, like, they have damn like circus rabbits. You would think that they're trained animals. And if the way we did caging 100 years ago didn't work, you wouldn't have any livestock today to breed rabbits with. It's just what they are comfortable with. And they always want to enforce, just put a picture up of some random rabbit cages and you will have 100 people tell you how cruel you are for having rabbits the way you have them. And it's all opinions, right? But that's always the biggest. How does the animal protection guy turn up at a property? Because somebody you knew said something to them. That's why. And it doesn't even mean necessarily that they really thought something was wrong. They're just mad at you that day.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane.
It's also because you don't have a perimeter fence and your gate closed, or you let them on.
That's right.
Something I'm almost done fixing here.
Yeah. The best thing we've done in the last 20 years is put fences and gates up.
Yeah.
And having the gates now, you used to be able to just walk under it. It was always surprising on a weekend when we'd be in here doing something and some stranger would show up. They would just park at the gate and just dip under the gate. But now having the fences and the dogs, like, that never happens. Like, your friends don't even show up anymore.
Yeah, Mark Baker from Baker's Green Acres. That's where I learned the importance of the gate and knowing what you're going to say when somebody asks to come through your gate.
You have a warrant?
Yeah. And then when they showed up at his place with a warrant, he doesn't have to let them into his house. He's like, they showed up, got out of their cars, talked to me about what, and they were like, we need to see these things. And they weren't wearing winter jackets or anything. He said, wait right here. And he said he went in, had a cup of coffee, talked to his wife for a while, took his time getting the paper. And they're like, well, can we come back in to talk about this? He's like, no, your warrant doesn't let you come in my house. So he knew where the line was. Mm-hmm. Hearing that dude's story is worth listening to if you're a homesteader or doing anything, so you know how to react when officials come.
Yeah, I mean, the livestock guardian dogs is another huge one.
Yeah, mine had a big fight. Oh my goodness, the comments.
But you have these idiots that move here with a poodle, and they're like, oh my God, this dog's out in the field. I mean, how come these cows don't have blankets? Oh, well, I mean, come on out here and hug them up. Keep them warm for me.
Yeah, my LGDs, I'm a little worried about them in the summer because it's going to be hot, but in the cold, they have coats this thick.
Yeah, I mean, we do every year. We bring in $600 worth of straw.
Yeah,
we put them around the kennels, and we put straw in there. And you know where the dogs sleep? Out in the snow.
Yep.
Every one of them out in the snow. And then people bring those dogs in, and they pant around and act crazy because they want to be outside. They are not house animals.
No, if you bring them inside, John, you shave them.
Oh God, you want to mess up Pyrenees up? Fuck, shave that dog. See what happens.
I've seen people do it.
Yeah.
They'll like show their freshly sheared dog, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, they get sunburned. I mean, it's bad. Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah. Before we Nick really helped me with the livestock guardians because I was like, oh man, now I got to get LGDs and I don't know what I'm doing. So how many calls did you have to take from me for that first 2 weeks? Like 9?
I think it was only like 3 or 4, maybe 5.
Yeah, it was very helpful. So thanks for that. And it wasn't so much anyway, it was just I needed them trained and I needed them not getting out and not killing anything I didn't want them to kill and killing things I do want them to kill. So, but 6 months later, we're all getting along.
Good. It gets better.
Yeah, no, they're great. They, occasionally one gets out and that is what it is, but they know where home is. And usually when they get out, it's because they're chasing something in the woods, which is their job. But they are, the one thing I didn't want with them was any doubt about who was dominant and having them turn on me, because that would be terrible.
Yep.
Tactical says dogs and sheep have shelter. Go over there right now, and they're standing in the rain. Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
Right.
And if you take a Pyrenees when she's soaking wet and you chop through one of those dreads that she has,
Yeah.
everything underneath is completely dry, and that
Bone dry.
matted hair is completely dry in the middle.
Interesting. I've never given the dog a haircut. Ours don't have dreads yet, so I don't know if they will.
They will if you don't
The
brush
sheep
them.
do.
Yeah. And even the sheep, cut the sheep, even though they're soaking wet.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
dry, they're dry inside.
Well, I dig my fingers down because my sheep like being scratched, and it's totally dry under there.
Yep.
So I mean, that's what they're built for. That's what. Anyway,
It's almost like they're made to exist out there.
Yeah, I'm just really pleased that the baby was not born on that coldest night of the year. Because I was like, it's going to be 4 a.m. and the damn thing's going to drop. And it's going to be -5 outside. But no, they were kind enough to wait till it was just 30 degrees outside. And the baby made it. So
that's better.
Yeah, it is what it is. Okay. Well, it looks like we're not getting a lot of new questions from the peanut gallery. You guys want to go once around the horn?
Sure. I do a live video every night at 9 o'clock. You can jump on YouTube here. I've got a little bit different content on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Super easy to find. We're everywhere. And jump on. We can talk about whatever you want.
Great. Mr. Ferguson.
Yeah, to find out about me, you can go to rareplantstore.com for my fodder trees. Like I said, we're going to have some of those cuttings up for sale in the next couple weeks. And I'm actually planning several consulting tours. The one that's coming up soonest is probably going to be the last full week of February, somewhere between the 19th to the 25th. And I'm going to be in Central Texas, kind of, I'll be going through Houston to kind of in between San Antonio, Austin area, then up to the DFW metro area, and then circling back. So I've got a few consults there. I probably have room for like maybe 1 or 2. So if you're in that region, let me know if you're interested. And then I might end up going out to Arizona later this year. And it looks like I'm probably going to be going up through all of the states up to Wisconsin and Minnesota and a couple of those more northern states, and then circling back down. And there's a chance next month I might actually be going out to South Carolina. So yeah, hit me up if you're interested in a consult, and you can find out about that at homegrownliberty.com/consulting. I've got distance consults and in-person consulting info there. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Well, guys, I did an update on the Self-Reliance Festival website over the weekend, and it turned on an old plugin that we're not using that asks a question about camping. And it made it so you couldn't buy tickets for 2 days. So I have turned that back off because thank you for the email. Somebody's like, I can't answer the question about camping. And I was like, oh, that turned itself back on. So tickets are on sale over at selfreliancefestival.com. It's at early bird pricing, $75 right now. We've got speakers coming in every day. And I just heard from Bear that he is coming and he is speaking. So he's going to talk about, so I don't know if you've been paying attention, but on his YouTube channel, he's talking it just from a CEO's perspective, business advice. He's going to focus on that for 80% of his presentation, and then add a little bit about, reasonable preparedness tactics. So I think it's going to be a great presentation, and that will be March 25th and 26th, selfreliancefestival.com for tickets. And we are doing a Self-Reliance Festival specific live stream every Thursday between now and the event, where we just answer questions or introduce new things that are coming up. So that's all happening. And I think that's probably the best way to interact with me in the next 6 weeks or so between now and the event. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming.